Bujugakanawia. I'd like to share a few thoughts about writing systems for Indigenous languages. Just like dialect wars can really do a lot to damage an emerging language revitalization effort, a war about writing systems can have the same effects. We've had these conversations in Ojibwe communities. Ours is an oral language. We did not have a system of writing it down. We did have a system of writing mnemonic devices on birch bark for remembering sequences and legends and songs for ceremonial rites, but we didn't have a writing system where there's a symbol for each sound in the language or something like that. That didn't happen until after contact with Europeans, and then Europeans, mainly trying to colonize us, wanted their religious traditions available in Indigenous languages, and some of the early writing systems for many Indigenous languages were developed by missionaries. Often, they used Roman letters. Once in a while, they used something different. Sometimes there would be competing writing systems, although a lot of times missionaries were just writing things down how they sounded to them. For Ojibwe, we ended up having eventually 3 different writing systems for our language. One, just people using Roman letters to communicate kind of based upon understandings of European language. So sometimes this would be classified as folk phonetics, people writing it down how it sounded to them. Some people doing work this way were more consistent than others, but often we had a lot of inconsistencies. There was another writing system which was developed at the same time that didn't use any Roman letters. It actually used a unique symbol for each syllable in the language. This was also developed by missionaries, often called syllabics, and it's pretty cool. It ends up being almost like a shorthand. It's shorter than writing out the Roman letters. So if you said Ga instead of G-A-H, G-U-H, or G-A-A, or whatever, they would just have one symbol. And it really took off. Actually, fluency rates for Ojibwe and Cree were higher than that of the non-native population around them because it was so easily adopted by Indigenous people. And then starting in like the 1940s, someone using Roman letters, Charles Fierro, ended up developing what's called the double vowel orthography for our language, which uses, distinct letter combinations for each unique sound in the language. So, the short A is used for the sound, so G-A for G, and then G-A-A for the long A sound, Ga. And one of the benefits of the double vowel system is that it's consistent. So in Ojibwe, for example, you could have a word like Inde, which means my heart, Indai, which means my dog or my horse, and Indi, which means my hind end. And if you're writing with folk phonetics, you might have those all spelled the same way. So it helps differentiate pronunciation, so you're not following your hind end around in what you do. So eventually, most of the publications started to employ and use the double vowel orthography. John Nichols made further refinements and so forth. But even just 30 years ago, a lot of our good, fluent first speakers of the language were a little resistant to adopting these writing systems. And they would say, because they were also bilingual, they learned English when they went to school. So they knew how to read and write in English, but nobody taught them how to read and write in Ojibwe, even though they're beautiful speakers of Ojibwe. So for them, almost easier to use folk phonetics, write it out how it sounds to them. But over time, eventually, double vowel won out for the Ojibwe world. However, you got to bear in mind the psychological dimensions of trying to figure out what your writing system is going to be. The elders, if you're in a community where you don't have lots of children who are speakers, the elders are the ones who are the experts on the language. And it doesn't feel good to have somebody who's not a fluent speaker of the language or is a second language learner to tell them how to do what they know. So it's better to work with your elders, and we have found that even some of the most resistant people to Indigenous writing systems that were kind of more formalized ended up getting on board when they could see the value of those systems for transmitting the language and teaching the kids. And they wanted their stories shared too. And we often worked in partnership with one another. I've done transcription, translation work with over 50 Ojibwe elders, most of whom didn't really care that much about what writing system would be used, but did want their stories to be shared. And so as we work with, rather than going over on our elders, we've been able to come to some agreement about the writing systems. Today in Ojibwe, syllabics is still a vibrant writing system, so is the double vowel system. The folk phonetic stuff is not getting nearly as much time and work, and we didn't have to spend any energy putting anybody down or telling them that they're wrong. We just kept building, and that was the end result for us. Ultimately, we really don't want to be fighting our own people. We want to be working together, and we want to produce good language content that will be of service to the revitalization efforts we all believe in so strongly. Miigwech.